Good morning, everybody. Pete Engle here. Guys, Sports Talks. Are you serious? And I hope we don't have any internet issues. I see a little pixelation. I see a little hesitation in my video, but let's hope not. I've had a good run here for a while, and we fixed everything that we could think of to fix. So hopefully we're doing okay here. Anyway, welcome to the show. Welcome to everybody on TGI Sports Talk, obviously. Let's Talk Sports, Northeast Streaming Sports, maybe on Sideline Sports at some point. Not sure what's going on there. We'll talk to our liaison at Let's Talk Sports, Dan Harris, who has set up that affiliation, if you will. Dan's been a little bit under the weather, so we wish him well. Also, remember, you can watch this show at any point in time on Facebook, YouTube, Twitter, whatnot. Please get to TGI Sports Talk, like and follow the show, whether it's on Facebook. Go to YouTube, and I'd really push the YouTube portion of this, but please do that and ring the bell, as Dan Harris would say, and help us grow our subscriptions. We're really growing the followers on Facebook greatly. Twitter and YouTube, not so much, because I don't know how to do it. But we'll see. There's lots of people want me to pay them to do it, but look, I'm in this for the fun and talking to you guys. We had a great show and a great turnout comment-wise Wednesday night for the college football huddle, and also a tremendous reaction to all the groups and some great numbers of views. So I appreciate that. Please, again, the individual shows, share them with your friends. That's the way we will grow. Share it to your page. It's not that hard to do, guys. Alec Simpson, good morning. How are you, buddy? Good to have you with us over there in the UK. Speaking of our friends across the pond, good to have you with us as well. Alec, also a great contributor to Let's Talk Sports. Today, guys, once I'm joined by the Mad New Yorker, assuming I am, we're going to talk a little bit. We'll talk a lot about the trade deadline. We'll focus on some Mets fire sale conversation. I mean, Verlander and Scherzer wanted out because Steve Cohen would not commit that they would be all in next year. According to Mets sources, they're building towards 2025. The Yankees do nothing, and it was showing until yesterday. A nice game last night. For the most part, some bonehead running plays again, some bonehead fielding plays, but they managed to squeak out a 4-3 victory last night. No moves, though. I mean, they think this team, as is, can make up the distance in a wild card and make noise in the playoffs. I'm unsure. We'll see. And also, I don't know if we'll get to it here, but we're going to talk about it at some point on our shows this week. Maybe we'll dive into it in the Sunday Stream of Conscience for sure. How does Anthony Rizzo go 3 months, basically, with a concussion and nobody diagnoses it? Who's running the medical ship there? Annoying, man. Well, look at some of the other winners and losers who really helped themselves at the trade deadline. The Rangers did. The Astros did. The Rays did. I'm sorry, the Marlins did, in my mind. We'll look at some of that. And we'll talk more in depth on this at 3 o'clock in the Major League Baseball update with our own Drew Ehrlich as well. We'll also talk a little bit of Jets talk, what's going on the first week of camp. Rodgers continues not to play in preseason games, which, listen, this early in preseason, I don't blame him. I won't watch it. I had no reason to watch a Hall of Fame game last night. What is the reason to watch that game? None. And Rodgers has not played a preseason game at all, any preseason game since 2018. We can talk about that a bit. And also his comments about Sean Payton this week. Sean Payton, at the time he made comments about Nathaniel Hawthorne, he was getting paid to make those comments. So whatever. Then don't let coaches and players go into broadcasting, right? And maybe the college football realignment we'll talk about too, which we talked a lot about Wednesday on the college football huddle. But we could dive into a little bit more here with the Mad New Yorkers. He seemed to have some things to say, and we'll take your topics and comments as well. It looks like Carlos is trying to get in here, but he does not seem to have a feed. So, Carlos, I'm not sure what's going on, but you are not. There you go. He pops back out. Not getting in the room. So, listen, the trade deadline. I'll talk a little bit while we're waiting on Carlos. By the way, there's a couple pieces to this trade deadline. There's two things. There's the players that were acquired and traded away, of course. But also, there's the fact that there's players coming back, like Mike Trout, like Max Fried, like maybe Walker Buehler for the Dodgers, possibly coming back here in the next 30 days to maybe give the Dodgers a big lift, whether it's even it's out of the bullpen. If he recovers from his arm surgery over a year ago, that they're going to be like a major acquisition. So some teams are counting on that, as they should. And we'll talk a little bit about who maybe won and lost. Yankees are big losers here. I mean, in my mind, look at, even if you weren't going to make a run or try to make a run, which they're still trying to do, they're only what, 2.5, I think, out of the wild card race right now. Let me take a quick look. If we wait for the Mad New Yorker to try to get back in here, 2.5 out of the wild card race. That's certainly not undoable. I mean, this team has got to turn it around. I would like to have seen them get rid of some deadwood. Find a way to take Stanton. Somebody wouldn't. I know Stanton's not doing very well, but Stanton could get hot for 2 months. And if you're going to eat the rest of his contract, you saw it happen across town with Steve Cohen eating money. That's the only way to get rid of it. You want to sign guys to these albatross of contracts, you had better be prepared to eat them when it's time to move them. Yankees did none of that. None of that. So I'll tell you what, Stanton, LeMahieu, Rizzo when he gets healthy, and that's a whole nother story, the Rizzo story. How he was undiagnosed for 3 months, beyond me. So I don't know. I don't think the Mariners did enough to help themselves. They traded their closer. Angels, maybe, but, the Angels now have lost 3 in a row. They're 5-5 in their last 10 since they decided to go for it. So did they help themselves? They think this is the best way to keep Ohtani. I'm not so sure. But we'll get into all this. Here's the Mad New Yorker now finally making it in the room. Good morning, Carlos. Have no volume. You have no audio. Carlos having some...
Yeah, good morning, everybody.
There he is. Carlos,
how's it going? Happy Friday. Yo, Keith, why every weekend I feel like I'm trying to get into the club with you, man?
That's because, I travel with a very exclusive group of people. And the engineers behind the scene go, this guy can't belong here. Look at him.
You maybe it makes me feel like I'm worlds apart. We're like 30 minutes away from each other.
30 minutes? I moved 30 minutes further away from you just to make sure there's plenty of distance. So anyway, good to have you with me this morning as always. I started talking a little bit about the trade deadline, and we'll dive into it more here. Obviously, locally, it was a mixed bag. The Mets having a fire sale, which was not unexpected. Maybe the reason that 2 guys got traded was a little bit unexpected with Steve Cohen unwilling to guarantee either one of these guys that the Mets would be trying to win next year. And that they were targeting 2025. And the Yankees making literally, or technically, no moves. They picked up 2 relievers that, you know what, that could be you and me. Right. And it would make the same. Let's start with the Mets. What are your thoughts? I know you're probably a bigger Met fan than a Yankee fan, so you have tickets. What do you feel like as a season ticket holder, hearing your owner say, we're probably writing off next year?
Yeah, I think the most important thing, there's a lot of hoopla in the media about what's going on. A lot of fans with their hands in the air and, all upset. But, and everybody has a right to have their own opinion. But I think what's fair to say is that this is Stephen Cohen's first year spending that much money. He did last year when he first got the Mets, and now he did it this year. And it's you got to remember he's a new owner still, so he's learning. And this is something that people, entrepreneurial and people with vision, this is something that happens, right? It takes money to make money, and sometimes you just invest a little bit too much money and you don't get an ROI, and you want return on your investment. I mean, if you're spending hundreds of dollars, thousands of dollars, you want to make sure that you get something back in return. And unfortunately, this is a sport that is it's not easy to win in this sport, right? It takes a lot from not just ownership but management and the players to put in a little bit more effort due to the schedule. But you can't buy championships. I think that's something that we're learning now, is that there's people who've done it, Crony and Zulingo. I mean, they had that opportunity. I'm sorry?
Who?
Zaninga, right? The owner of the Marlins?
Oh, yeah. Wayne, yeah. It's not quite that way, but believe me.
I probably mispronounced his name.
Huizinga.
Huizinga, I think. Huizinga, yeah, I'm sorry. Yeah.
And but that's 20 years ago.
It doesn't matter. The fact of that it was able to be done, I think the idea is that it's the same. I look at it, the fans looking at it the same way when Tom Brady left the Patriots. They were hoping to see the same Tom Brady play for the Buccaneers, right? Like they have this vision of something, and they want that same perception to just kind of overflow. And that's not how that works. This is sports, and again, just because you're spending a lot of money, don't mean you're going to get a lot of return on your investment. It's just you're just spending money, and I feel too that a lot of owners who kind of like hold on to their wallet a little longer. That's what they fear in baseball, So that's why these bigger teams, they hold, they have more, they have put more skin in the game, and they have issues because of that, Because I don't think that the owners in baseball don't have enough money and they're in small markets. I just think that for them, it's like the risk isn't worth the reward, right? Because they know where they sit in their divisions, right? They know that those teams like the Yankees have a bigger payroll.
I think teams need to take a lesson as far as spending money. You can spend money on outside free agents, but developing your own players, that was a model the Astros had when the Astros started building their mini dynasty, if you will. That's been the model that the Diamondbacks have used. They've fallen back a little now, but that's what they've used. That's what the Reds went to a few years ago, and everybody, including me, was ripping them for trading their entire team away. The Rays obviously do it year after year and contend. This is the model. Build your own farm system up. So number one, you make your team better, and you have some prospects to trade for useful players in pennant races, which is what these teams are doing.
Yeah, and I think you hit on something about the Astros, but also we have to remember the Astros have a few things and done things differently, and the Yankees had the opportunity to connect with these. The Yankees had the opportunity to keep Reggie Jackson as a consultant, and pay him to be in upper management or part ownership. Yeah. The Yankees had that opportunity, and they blew it. So where did Reggie Jackson go? Where'd he go?
Houston.
Yeah, exactly. So the bigger part of me says, well, that's what you get for not put your money where your mouth is, right? Like, and then who else did Houston pick up after they dropped the ball with the situation?
When
they got the suspensions, who they pick up?
Dusty Baker.
Exactly. So the upper management, the leadership, those things, it has a ripple effect. Those things matter, people. Fans, those things matter. And when fans ask for older guys like Buck Showalter or these people that know about baseball and they want them in their system, that's a small little part of what goes on. Who right now, and what is the Yankees issue for picking up players? And then we'll talk about the Mets here in a second.
The guys running the show, Brian Cashman.
Yeah, and who are the people that he had in his? He had a lot of people he'd worked with in the past that would help him with that, and he'd even had the guy where the buck stopped before he passed away. Those little things matter, Keith. I think that fans are just like they want to see they want to see championships, and when you're in New York,
I do.
yeah, when you're in New York, that's what you want to see. You don't want to hear about culture. You don't want to hear about process. You don't want to hear about bringing up a team. You just want to see championships because your team has the money, and it shouldn't be an issue if you have the money.
And I'll tell you what, as a Yankee fan with 27 world championships, yes, I talk about it all the time that I'm spoiled. This team has gone since 2009 without even being in a World Series, much less winning one. And Brian Cashman winning in the last 20 years. They've been to 2 World Series and won the same number as the Royals, by the way. And I know I'm spoiled, but it isn't just, yes, I want championships, but I want to watch good baseball too. The worst part is I'm watching a boring baseball team. That's the worst part of it. And the Mets, I think, to some extent, are the same way. People don't want to watch boring baseball.
And what's funny about with watching the Mets is like it is boring, but when something exciting happens, you're like, whoa, you can see it explode on the screen because it's so boring. It's so malaise. There's so much, it's just so flat.
I think the Yankees' problems are different than the Mets in the fact that the Yankees also have a huge issue and it comes from the top down. And I hold Aaron Boone more responsible for this than anybody. Cashman for getting the players, but Boone for the lack of good fundamental baseball. It's terrible. Even last night in a win, they made some bonehead plays in the field, bad base running plays again. This happens every night. Horrible base running plays night after night after night, and it gets to be like impossible to watch. And I blame Aaron Boone because he'll laugh about Gleyber Torres, that's Gleyber, and he'll run, and he laughs when they do something well, and then when they know he made a mistake and it made a mental error or whatever, we've talked to Gleyber about that. Well, when is he going to do something about it?
Yeah,
you're not in charge the way you think you are because guys don't listen. Or you're just a joke to the players. I don't know.
Yeah, but on the flip side, on this side, we have Mr. Rigid, Mr. Mr. Baseball here in Buck Showalter, and he's running things, but he's still putting people out there that are struggling, and he's trying to get them to get going.
They're all struggling, though. I mean, what do you do in a lineup when they're all struggling?
That's the problem. You see, so. I think
one thing though, Carlos. So what I'm talking about is mental errors in fundamental baseball, right? I don't see those errors. Maybe they're. And I don't watch the Mets, 9 innings every night like I do with the Yankees, right? Mm-hmm. But I don't see that. I see players failing physically, failing to perform, batting average, home run, whatever, making physical errors, not as many mental errors as I see with the Yankees. So that's the difference between Buck and Boone in my mind.
But here's the thing too, though, Keith, and this is baseball. When even in sports, when they talk about everything in sports is like 90% mental, 10% physical, right? I think it gets to a point where some of these players
That's not what Yogi said.
I know. These yoginisms
90% mental, the other half is physical.
Yeah, I mean, but so there's just an issue right now. As far as with the Mets and their play on the field is not as bad as their hitting, and hitting in certain positions. But the thing is, and they changed hitting coaches and they've changed a lot of things. There's always a little bit of change every season. But I mean, this is something that's been going on since even 2015, which is why they got who they got in Cespedes. Like they cannot hit the ball when the runners are on base or in scoring position. And I think, we have to be real with the situation. And you said this about pitching, right? There ain't that many pitchers in the league. Why are they gonna, bring in more expansion teams? Well, how about this? There ain't that many hitters in the league either.
Well, I don't disagree that, again, you don't have depth on teams for sure.
Yeah. And so here's my thing. And we're always screaming just because we want to see wins and championship. The minors was contracted, so the players that are on the minor leagues teams from last year and this year, they're it. That's it. They're on the cusp of getting cut if they don't make the team, right or wrong.
Absolutely, everybody's job should be.
And then there was the influx of the draft that happened last year and this year. So those guys have to move up at least to minor ball 2, right? To second, right? At least
they Theoretically, yes.
Yeah. So, you know, the whole changing of the rules, the contraction of baseball. We've mentioned this on the show, and I said it to you, and you were hell bent on getting on for your team to get Judge, and I was hell bent not to, you know, I was already upset when they picked up Scherzer, and I was like, I was totally not wanting Verlander because I said that age, he's already peaked. Even if he has something left, he's
Those
already
are
peaked.
different set of circumstances.
Yeah, so I was like, you know, these small things that happen, they all add up. These are small puzzle pieces that they all add up. And you want to throw, Alec is correct. You want to throw that into the mix of them playing in this meet of New York.
Yeah.
That's all an effect, you know.
I talk about this a lot. There's some guys that are just not built to play here.
Yeah, and
because it's much different than playing in Green Bay.
Right. And when for instance on the Mets, when I saw Pham and they gave him an opportunity because of an injury, you know, I was like, I don't know, this guy, he's like 35. What does he have left? What does he have left? He was the best player in baseball for the Mets for like 3 months. Like, this guy was nuts. He was,
right.
And, you know, and I'm like, when he left, I was like, man, you know, that's gonna hurt a little bit.
He was their most tradable. He was their most tradable commodity, though. So
him and Robertson, right?
Yeah.
So you took your best pitcher, right, and then you took your best hitter, and you got rid of him because that was the two commodities that you can move. But you had to move them anyway because their contract was too big. And I like that Stephen Cohen moved them because of that. He was thinking business. He didn't handicap himself, and that for that I give him credit. For that, I think that the Mets get a C+, a B-. Where in retrospect, the Yankees, they've been handicapped since the Stanton deal. Then they went and got Cole, and now you put Judge in the mix, and the fans are like, why can't we win? Do you see the amount of money that's going on the field?
This is my problem with what the Yankees did not do at the trade deadline. I don't have a problem with them saying, oh, we're going all in because this team is flawed. There wasn't going to be an impact player that they could bring in here because there's so many problems.
Right.
It was going to make that big a difference. But they could have shed. If they wanted to do what Steve Cohen did and eat a bunch of Stanton's money, they could have moved him. Now, I know he's not playing well, but you could have. There's a team out there that would have taken a chance on his bat for the next 2 months.
Somebody took a chance on Scherzer, and thank God.
Well,
thank God that the Mets found that team. Because not to say that Scherzer's not a good player, but he didn't perform to the best of his abilities every time he was on the mound.
I think the Mets got a good return, too. I think the kid they got, besides getting him off in that team, I know they had to eat $35 million, but still, they get him off that roster. He doesn't want to be here. I'm not saying he's a bad influence because, you know, he wants to play on a winner. He's
you want to win. You want to win. Yeah.
They did a good job, I think, getting Acuna, who's, you know, like the 44th best prospect in baseball, which isn't terrible.
And a lot of scouts say he's better than his brother. And I don't try to listen to what scouts say because it's not, even though they see these guys play every day, they're not playing in the majors.
They're gonna talk their own guys up for sure.
Yeah,
they
exactly. Right, so they want to keep the jobs too. So like, but it's not like they do a bad job. It's just like it's not the problem with a prospect and a high draft pick is that you don't get the same player when you're in the majors. Like there's a process, and that process is still unbeknownst to anyone because it's not always working out for these guys.
They're called prospects for a reason, right? Because there's no sure things. In fact, I saw, and I can't give you the numbers now, but there was an article I read in the last week about how teams in the last decade, let's say, I don't know how far back I went, say the last 10 years, the big trades and the prospects that came back for those players and how they fared later on, 90% of the time there was no major contribution by any of the prospects that came the other way. That's a chance you take. Right. But there's also the positive of you have to move Scherzer. It was impossible for the Mets to move forward and get better with Scherzer and Verlander on this roster because of their contracts.
Right. And I like what Nimmo said, and he spoke to the media about the business of baseball. But not only that, it's like the players haven't performed on the field. And what they started with in spring break and to what they are now are two different teams. He said that. He's like, we haven't done what we're supposed to do, and that those guys had to get moved. And that's what baseball is. That's the business of baseball. And again, Cohen is new at this, and I believe that it's good that he's kind of new at this because there's nothing as far as a fan base, and he wants to make everybody happy, he's still a businessman, and that's still his own money, people. That's $352 million that you're not spending.
Part of the problem is he's a fan with a whole bunch of money. That's his problem.
But again, fans are going nuts, and again, that you don't own the Mets. You buy tickets and you buy parking tickets. You want to see championships, but that's not your money, and you don't play with other people's money. And at least he didn't just take the team from the Wilpons. He actually made the team something to watch. Like the Wilpons were getting,
we're trying to do Brian Cashman.
Huh?
They just won 100 games last year, so it isn't like they've stunk since they got there.
Right.
What were they doing before?
And Cohen could easily go the Cashman route and try to find hidden gems and trying to find and trying to wheel and deal mid-level players that are peaking. He could do that, and he's not. He said, "I'm going to try to get the top players to get the most wins to win a championship," and he's doing that. The problem is that there's no return on his investment, and now he's going to eat about $352 million.
Well,
and I don't even know exactly what the price is because I'm not involved in those deals. That's just what we hear about contracts, but we don't know what the real contract is. We don't know the incentives that were given. The cash that's been put out, that has been paid out front, is different as well, right? So,
I'm not sure I take him at his word that they won't try to compete next year. I think they will. It came out too. The original report with Scherzer was we're focusing on 2025, which isn't exactly accurate. He said, "I told Max Scherzer that I can't guarantee we're going to be major players in the free agent market in the offseason, but I don't know what's going to happen." He said, we could be competitive next year. It's like we're just going to go and punt the season. Yeah. So he's going to try to put a competitive team on the field.
How about this, Scherzer? Like, leave the contracts to the GM, and let the team. Then just leave. If you're not going to win, just leave the team. Like, it's okay.
That's what he did. I mean, basically,
and that's okay. But at the end of the day, you got what you wanted. Not what like you got what you wanted. A little bit.
There's a lot of fans out there, Met fans now, are trying to say, and they were trying to say, I think the next day that, well, it was Scherzer that asked out. Or Scherzer didn't ask out until the Mets said, "Will you waive your no trade clause?" And he said, "Well, it depends. Are you going to try to compete next year?" And they said, "Well, we're not sure." And he said he waived it. So he waived his no trade clause. That's not a trade demand.
And look, I don't know. Like,
neither did Verlander, by the way. He didn't demand a trade. He said, "You want to trade me? I'm only going to Houston."
Right. Well, what baffles me, Keith? This is what baffles me. This is what gets me confused. Is like, because remember, as much as I like the Mets, I don't mind if you get moved because you don't do your job, right? I was okay with DeGrom leaving. I was okay. I wasn't okay when they let Chris Bassett go because he was a younger pitcher and they could have used him. But instead they went to Scherzer and then Verlander. So
and Quintana.
Quintana, right. And right now, who's doing the best out of all four of those is a guy that the Mets let go. But look, at the end of the day, the Mets fan base, they got Nimmo, which was kind of like, good because he's a homer, right? He was from the.
He's a good player. He's a good baseball player. He's got good. I talked before about fundamentals. He has good baseball instincts as well as being a really talented player.
And at least he runs out every time he hits the ball.
Part of what I'm talking about, right?
So they got McNeil, which I'm okay. I'm sort of okay with that. I would have been okay with him if they try to move him, but because he only had one good year, last year. They still haven't signed, and the fans still want them to sign Pete Alonso, and they were upset when they heard Pete Alonso was maybe on the trading block.
Well, he was. They put him out there, but their asking price was just too high for people. So listen, he may not be part of this future going forward. The offseason's coming, and Pete Alonso could be offered around again. You lost your audio again.
Here's the thing, and we had conversations about this. What do you pay Pete Alonso? Because him coming up had very low grades from scouts. Here we just talked about this a few seconds ago, right? He's very low, but he's been improving every year.
Till this year. Right now he looks like Dave Kingman.
Yeah, I know. Oh my gosh. Listen, no, but he led the rookie. He led as a rookie. He the second year he got almost the same amount of home runs. Like, even if he's even though he's a home run hitter, he does slump. And that's been consistent.
All home run hitters are going to slump, right? I mean, look at Stanton, for crying out loud. He's turned into Stanton.
So Pete Alonso, look, the Mets got rid of Dominic Smith, who was a better defender than he was a hitter, and that's already proven because he's been doing the same thing on the Nationals, right? That he's a better defender than he is a hitter.
But he does not give you enough offense at first base, I don't think.
Right. So do you move if you're Cohen? This is the heart of the baseball team because he's a part of the system too, right? Do you move on from Pete Alonso?
I don't know. It's going to depend on the contract situation. It's going to depend on a lot of things and the offers that they have for him. If he wants to tear this all down, then it's possible Pete Alonso gets traded. And
I say what Alonso should get paid. Because we mentioned this before on this show. In baseball, you don't get paid for what you're going to do. You get paid for what you've done. Mostly, yeah. And if you're Pete Alonso and you can humble yourself, you take the New York home contract. You take the cut on the contract if you want to stay here because we're willing to give you the position for you to get better at, and you have the opportunity to get even better.
What's he under control for one more year?
No, right next he's up for a contract this summer.
But they have control, don't they? Have I think he's in their control through next year. He could be arbitration eligible,
right?
But I think they have team control through next year. I think. But again, that's when teams move guys, right? They don't want to wait.
Yeah.
Until they have no options.
That's why people are kind of like the fans here are kind of gritting their teeth because they're like, if Cohen wants to make a statement, he can say that he's going to sign Pete Alonso and everybody's going to be happy, but they're in the same situation, Keith. They're in the same situation. You didn't move a player when you could have, and maybe, but then again, what first baseman's out there that's eligible for, that you can get that has pop?
Again, I'd have to look at the eligible free agents, but I remember, nobody really.
And I'm gonna be honest with you, I feel bad for Pete Alonso because, like even him coming out as a college player, because they told him when he was in high school that he needed to develop more skills. He went into the minors. They keep telling him he needs to develop more skills. He comes into the majors, he's hitting the ball like crazy, and he's working on his defense. So this is a guy who's been getting better and doing it the right way, right? Staying the course. But now, because the situation is there aren't that many players that you can switch him out with in his position, and the fact that his ceiling is not as high as people want to be, there's going to be a discrepancy on the paying. I'm paying him.
Getting outside of New York, who do you see as the big winners here? To me, I think the Rangers are big winners here.
I'm not sure. The Rangers, they keep getting injured.
Well, again, assuming they get some people pitching back to their historical norm, like Scherzer, like Chapman, and some other guys. I think Texas showed. Listen, the team's good enough, and I was wrong about them. Alan, sorry, I was wrong about your team. They've hit a few road bumps this year. They had some starting pitching issues. They went out and addressed them, assuming the guys stay healthy. So I think they've done a lot. I think the Marlins did pretty well with some interesting acquisitions for their offense and their bullpen and Robertson.
I think the Marlins will go further because the East is so open. Then the Rangers will go in their division, and only saying that because it feels like this is the NBA all over again. Like the Rangers have chased all these names, but these guys already peaked. Allen, these guys have already peaked. Scherzer is good for 4 to 5 innings. If you can find middle relief that could take over the job,
there's an issue. Well, they've got. I mean, if they move Dane Dunning back to the bullpen, and he can be the gap, because you got a couple of really good 5-6 inning pitchers in Scherzer and Montgomery, both. Montgomery's not going to go deep into games.
And Chapman?
Well, Chapman's a reliever, but
how many innings can he pitch on a really tight situation?
No, you can't pitch him back-to-back days and stuff at this point. But again, I think the Rangers did a good job. They brought in Chris Stratton, who's a good bullpen piece. They brought a good defensive catcher in Austin Hedges for late inning work.
I think to be honest with you, that's one of the best pieces that they moved was to get Hedges because they needed somebody in that position with depth. Listen, I don't know. I mean, you make these moves to be in a championship position, to be in a playoff position. And I hope it works for your favor. But most of the time it doesn't, you know. Most of the time you run out of gas because those guys run out of gas.
You know, I still think a team to be careful of here in the second half is the Marlins. I mean, they made some low impact players, but some guys who are having good seasons in Jake Berger and Josh Bell. They were able to get rid of Juan Segura's contract, which is another plus. And they've got pitching and Arraez, who's just a freaking hit machine. And if they're able to score enough runs, this team's going to stay in this wild card hunt the entire season, I think.
And Alcantara is finally in form, man. What did he do last? I think he was just tired, man. He just pitched so good last year. Then he didn't get a break. You know, like unfortunately, Keith, you know, you hate that, you know, but about pitchers nowadays. But the guy needed a break, man. The guy, he did so well last year. He should have.
Again, one of the reasons he wears down and needs a break is because they don't build up their endurance because the way they're trained. But I don't want to get into that whole thing.
Yeah, I mean, but he's looked like he's getting back into form as far as like control and getting some strikeouts there. I feel like the Marlins are going to give the biggest fight in the East, but Atlanta's hot, man. So
I think the Astros getting Verlander is actually a really big move as well. That might be the most impactful move of this entire trade deadline because the Astros are still good. They've struggled a bit this year offensively. They had a lot of injuries, but now they're getting healthy. And they bring in the guy who helped lead them to 2 world championships already. It's the only place he wanted to go.
Man, you like Verlander. I mean, I saw him play last Sunday. Man, he still got a little bit left, but I wouldn't pitch him more than 6 innings.
I think that he's been getting a bad rap this year because he's pitched very well. And I think getting lumped with Scherzer, I think for the most part, Scherzer's pitch or Verlander's pitch well.
He pitched, and the Mets ended up winning 5-2. So.
Yeah. So anyway,
but yesterday, Senga pitched. No, not Senga pitched.
I'm not sure who pitched for them. Yesterday.
Kentia and Senga both pitched the last 2 games, playing against the Royals, but the Mets couldn't score any runs. So they were gone at least 6 innings. Both of them.
Carrasco pitched yesterday.
I mean Carrasco, yeah. But Carrasco was. I'm talking about the day before that, the 2 days before that. So I believe it was Senga, and then
it shows where the Mets are. That Brian Singer hasn't had a very good year this year. He was a big name being bandied about the trade deadline. He's had a horrible year, but he 3 hits the Mets for 8 innings. So,
oh man, listen. I mean, the hitting's been down for the Mets for a while, and it's and if you get rid of Pete Alonso, that's gonna make it worse.
Let's talk about a couple other subjects here today. The Jets. Rodgers continues his streak of no preseason games, which I don't care about. Later on in the preseason, I think these guys should play more. And he hasn't played a preseason game since 2018. Not one snap. He's not going to play. Again, later in the preseason, we need these guys to start playing more. I'm tired of watching bad football in September.
Thank you. I'm glad you said it because I keep saying that.
But then you disagree with me on the reason is because they don't train hard enough in training camp.
Yeah,
and they don't play.
It's more the style of coaching these guys are doing too. Well, listen,
they're afraid of guys getting hurt. That's what the only reason.
Did you watch the game? The full game?
You could not have made me turn that game on. No.
I watched two quarters. Look, I was even on the watching Rob on Sportscope, which I'll be on tonight at 8. I was like, it just felt like I was watching the same old Jets, and I know it's a second team, but this is the depth of the defense, right? Your second team, if your first team can't do it, your second team should be coming out and supporting and balancing you out. This feels like the same football. I've been watching the same football.
How can you judge that off of last night's game when they've been in camp for a week, and you're going to judge any team based off of last night's game? I might have seen
one or two players do some things. I'm surprised Zerline's still kicking the ball. Like, I know he's a kicker, and it's not a big deal. But
it is a big deal. Absolutely. Kickers are a huge deal.
Yeah, but he's not young. He's not no young cookie, man.
No, he's been around a long time.
Yeah, and like so he kicked the field goals. Like the fact that the coaching staff even made it a field goal game is like, I don't know, man. It's like you have the opportunity to get your players out there, get them moving, see their talent, and you're drawing up these just.
I'm not saying there's not a use for this, right? You're better off at this point in training camp, going to camp, and when the teams start practicing together, watching those things to find out how well players are progressing. That's what you're better off watching than these games, which mean nothing, and nobody plays except guys that you're not even going to make the team.
I know, but and look, I don't want to not give credit for these guys going out there and banging each other up.
No, good for them.
But yeah, they got the opportunity, but coaching staffs, come on, man. Come on. Like, this is the Hall of Fame game should be the first game of the season, not of the preseason. How about that? And it should be like, it should be the football, and it should be like
you said the first game of the season. So
yeah, and it should be
that they make the big deal about on Thursday night. You know what? That Carlos, I'm shocked I'm going to say this, but I think that's a brilliant idea.
It should be the Super Bowl rematch.
Yeah, this is an injustice to play first preseason game.
Yeah. And it should be a Super Bowl rematch. So it's a Hall of Fame Super Bowl rematch. Let's get it. If the Super Bowl was that close, how exciting would it be? This is the first game. You got to play the same team that you last played. You know how it's going to be gritty. That's what as a fan. That's what I want to, because I want to see the football season start off ultra competitive. And if it's a low scoring game because it's ultra competitive, I'll feel better about watching that game than if it's a team playing another team, kind of competitive, but they're still trying to get the kinks worked out. Like, no, there should be no kinks to work out. Go out there and try to get 27 points, and defense try to stop 10 of those. Like, just go at it hard, man. Like,
yeah, I get it, but again,
Keith, I can't stand. It'd be week 6. You're watching a game. The standings matter. It's a shorter league. The standings matter, and your offensive line is not because they got somebody who was hurt, brought in another player, and they're not in tune with the quarterback, or the running back is running into the new lineman or the tight end.
Oh, that's because you've been watching Jet games for the last 30 years.
Jeez, come on, man, let's get it. You guys should be in tune. Your first and second team should be in tune with each other. And if you're onto your third team, like the Detroit Lions were, where they huffed and puffed for like four weeks, and they still were winning. In fact, they were a better balanced team last year with the injuries than they were the year before when they had less injuries.
You think you'll learn anything about this team? Are you interested in watching this team on Hard Knocks the next 5 weeks, starting next Tuesday night?
If I watch this team on Hard Knocks, it'd be probably like 3 or 4 seasons later. Like, I'm not interested in anything that's going on. I feel like because we're in New York, the high hopes of the Jets fans and the whole Aaron Rodgers thing, and like I want to like see it all play out, and then go back to be like, okay, what did they do in the beginning of the season that of Aaron Rodgers' era that made this whole thing a mess, or that made it great? I don't want to be caught in the moment because your emotions so everywhere.
I mean, I think people have lower expectations because the Jets have said they're going to shut HBO out of a lot of stuff and not let them film certain things, and that there will be nothing good come out of this. I think anytime there's going to be cameras on Aaron Rodgers and microphones on Aaron Rodgers, you got the potential for something good.
Just the faces he makes now. He looks, right now being in New York, he looks more goofier than he did when he was in Green Bay, not participating in preseason.
What about?
He's happy. He's on something.
Is this whole thing? What do you make of the whole thing? Again, controversy just follows him around, and I guess part of me says, "Oh, good for you, sticking up for your coach." After why? To me, this is a non-story because Sean Payton, if I'm not mistaken, maybe I'm wrong, he made his comments about Nathaniel Hackett and performing the worst coaching job in the history of the NFL last year, while he was getting paid on TV to make those type of comments. And Hackett takes exception to it because some coaches code. He wasn't coaching. He was getting paid to be a commentator. And Rodgers takes exception with it and makes a whole big deal out of it this week. Is this just a slow news week, or is that a big deal?
Yeah, I think with the NFL and what they've done is great because they're on TV 24/7, even when the season even hasn't started yet, and they find little things to make news. But what's kind of ironic is that a lot of these guys who are in the NFL, they don't give you the 100% light of what's going on, right? Because on the other side, there's a couple guys that got arrested. There's people who are going to jail, there's people going to jail for life. Like they're not going to shine a light on that, which makes sense.
Yeah, but don't let the air out of footballs because you'll be 24/7.
But you want to announce all this news 24/7, then I think another thing too is like it's not just slow in football, but the thing that has happened in ESPN with all these commentators getting the axe, ESPN trying to do different things because they're owned by Disney and they're trying to find ways to make their stock have some kind of value. Those kind of things have affected as well, like what's going on in this preseason too. Like they're NFL has done okay by making sure all those things are stuck in the shadows and not in the light, right? So, and they've always done that. They've always tried to protect their name, So that's what they do. That's what the NFL does. And listen, this is a small tidbit fight that can push and give that game a little bit more meaning. Right, like what I'm talking about. Give the game some kind of meaning.
I agree. I think if you're celebrating, the greats of the game, Hall of Fame weekend, because inductions are this Saturday, I believe, right?
Yeah, tomorrow.
That's why they played a game in conjunction with it. I think they're giving to play the worst game you may see all year, the very first preseason game between, again, sometimes it's worse teams than we saw last night, even. Mm-hmm. I can't believe I'm saying this again. I think your idea is brilliant to make it the first game of the regular season and play it in Canton. But how are you going to reimburse those teams? Because they're going to lose out on millions of dollars of ticket revenue and concessions and everything else. So.
Well, I think baseball does it the best where they have opening season for like 2 weeks, almost 2 weeks, right? Because they got the teams that play away from home.
Well, baseball did away with their Hall of Fame game years ago. They played it in the middle of the season in June or July. Actually, it was in July, I think, before the inductions that same week. I used to go to it all the time when I was a kid because it's only like an hour away. Yeah,
you're in Cooperstown. You're right down. Yeah,
and
right on the street.
Teams used to come in and play their regulars. I remember getting Ernie Banks' autograph and Ray Fosse's autograph back in the 70s when the Cubs and Indians were there. But it got to the point where teams were just playing their minor leaguers. And what was the point of bringing them to Cooperstown to do that? Nobody wanted to see that. So I think the NFL should get away from it. I think that's a great idea.
It's just, I don't know. Wait, you got to see Wilson be Wilson. I don't feel like he's got any progress going over there.
Yeah, but again, how can you judge that based off of 5 days of practice and then play that game?
Yeah, but you were a number 2 pick, man. Come on, Keith.
It's a preseason game. Why don't they do it on Pro Bowl week? Well, they're not going to do that because the teams are done playing, Alec. I don't think anybody's going to.
Alex, try to have the All-Stars play on Pro Bowl
week. The Pro Bowl game.
Try to have the All-Stars go and play the Pro Bowl week. Half of them out.
Well, they don't even play a game anymore, right? I mean, we played a flag football game last year. So, again, which is fine with me because the game was awful. So, probably not a bad idea. Better than this idea, Alec. I know they want to play it in conjunction with the Hall of Fame inductions. Move the Hall of Fame inductions back a few weeks, and as Carlos said, make it the first game of the year.
Yeah, Labor Day weekend, man. You get people to this game.
I like it. You can find ways to make up the revenue for these teams.
Yeah,
whatever. Lastly today, and I talked about this a lot Wednesday night, I think dominoes are getting ready to fall. Colorado's gone back to the Big 12 starting next year. The Pac-12, and it may not seem like a big deal on the face of it. Okay, Colorado's leaving, big deal. But it is a big deal because if you can't keep Colorado, how are you going to keep Oregon and Washington in that? This, to me, signals the death knell, and the Pac-12 is bleeding out right now because the rumors started right after this. The Big Ten is after Washington and Oregon, and maybe even going past 18 teams to 20 and bringing in Cal and Stanford.
And then on the same second day, on the opposite side of the coast, Florida State University says ACC is not giving them enough money to compensate for what they want.
They basically didn't say if we leave, it's when we leave. They're leaving. They're leaving the ACC. It's a matter of whether it's this year or next year. They got to do it by August 15th. They got to notify the league if they want to play in a different league next year. They don't have an offer, but that brings up another thing, because now this becomes, if Florida State leaves, that's going to start a whole domino effect in the ACC. Clemson's not going to stay.
Nah.
SEC wants them. Maybe the Big Ten wants them. There's rumors about the Big Ten and Florida State. But there's no offers out there. You know what I find interesting?
Money.
It is all about money. Agreed. The only way the Pac-12 and the ACC, in my mind, will survive in the long run is if they find a way now, before Oregon and Washington go somewhere else, before Florida State goes somewhere else, or Clemson, is to put these teams. And again, I'm against this stuff. You know me. I like the regional aspect of college football, which is gone. But the only way for them to survive in today's environment is for them to merge these two leagues, and they'd have what the Big Ten has in a league from coast to coast, basically.
It was like Conference USA, but they had smaller teams, right?
Yeah, that's not gonna help either one of these.
No, but you remember, right? Conference USA had teams from, further apart from each other, and they were, and there was a lot of traveling. It cost a lot of money for those teams to do that.
Well, the whole thing, that's another question that's come up, is the football programs are driving all of this. There's a lot of money involved, and there's less travel for the football players and the teams than any of the other sports. So it affects the other sports negatively.
Right.
Because they got to keep traveling coast to coast, and kids miss 5 days of school.
They miss too much school, man.
Yeah, it's gotten to be really ridiculous.
Half of them don't go to class anyway. Is what a lot of people say, right? Some of these players don't go to class.
I mean, I'm wondering if Florida State really has the gumption to say by August 15th, which is only 11 days away, we're out of here without an offer from another conference. I don't know if they've got the the gumption to do that, because And by the way, he also ripped the rest of the league by saying, we're driving the revenue stream for this league, us and Clemson. No offense to everybody else. Well, if I'm Wake Forest and North Carolina State and Duke, I'm saying, F you, leave, But they can't afford to do that because they'll be in no man's land.
Drop the F, drop the S, F you.
Jesus, gosh. I mean, look, I don't know what, I think something's going to happen. Here's the other part of it too. I think the Big Ten would make this move right now with the Pac-12 and bring those 2 teams or maybe 4 teams into the league. But I don't think they want to be the reason the Pac-12 ultimately dies. They're a big reason already, but I don't think they want to be the ultimate reason this league goes away. Or the SEC and the Big Ten maybe both don't want to see them be the reason the ACC dies. So as bad as they are in the moves that they're making, in my mind, they don't want to be the ultimate bad guy that makes these leagues go under.
Yeah, I'm kind of surprised that you're not hearing Apple and Amazon and Netflix talking about picking up these games.
Well, you are. Apple right now is a leader for the Pac-12.
Oh, but not the ACC, right?
ACC's locked into a deal with ESPN till 2035. That's part of their problem.
That's their problem, right?
They got a bad TV deal, which at the time looked great, but not with teams getting $60 million a year for in the SEC and the Big Ten later.
You know what also drives these numbers up was the NIL deal, because now you have to pay these players, which you don't want to talk about. That's something else.
Again, that's
it has an effect, Keith. That's one of those. I know
it has an effect. Believe me, I'm not denying that. It's not having a good effect. That's the problem.
You're turning
part of the NIL, I think kids should be able to fly home when their grandmother dies without teams going on probation, or a kid should get a pizza if a coach wants to buy it for him. But they shouldn't be getting millions of dollars. Who was the player was reported last week? I still haven't found the name.
Take a breath.
Last week that a mystery team tried to lure him away for $3 million. That's not what NIL is for.
Wasn't that a kid from Florida?
I'm trying to remember.
Or Alabama. Oh, was that Alabama?
Let me see if I can find it real quick.
There's a few kids that in the last month were pulled away from other commitments with that NIL money.
Let me see if I can find it quickly with it. If I can. Nick Saban, that's not it. Yeah, I guess I'm not going to find it.
No, it's recruits, man.
I mean, again, it wasn't made so that the NIL wasn't put in there so that because in conjunction with the transfer portal, they can be free agents every single year.
Yeah, but then when you sign a deal, most of the time when you sign an NIL deal, even though it is your name, it's also tied into your university. So like you would make as a player for
supposed to be.
Well, yeah, it is because they're the ones who have a third party where the checks come in, and they're the ones that made you like if you're at Michigan, and you're a basketball player and you sign the NIL deal, the deal is because you're at Michigan and you are a player of Michigan's University of Michigan. That's how the contracts are written. So that
was never supposed to be used as a recruiting inducement for a player, and that's what and we knew this was what he would bastardize into, and exactly what I said would happen has happened, and it's even worse.
It's worse. Yes, you're right.
There, somebody else is trying to lure you away the same way, so it's even worse.
I've never argued that it was great. I was just saying that there's a lot of lawsuits, man, with NIL. I'm gonna do a show about that. So, you know, it's coming up in the next few weeks. I've been working with people and trying to get some guys interview and, you know, just kind of explain NIL and also give you guys insight on what's going on with NIL. And
if you want somebody to rip the other side, I'll come in.
No, I'm also doing a show about the TV contracts, you know, college football and all that. And how
that's interesting. And make sure you do your research good. Not that you won't, but because there's a lot of very convoluted stuff going on. The Pac-12 has done a horrible job out there with that's what's killed them. That's what's killed this conference is the fact that they've mismanaged their TV contracts. Which again, it's all about money, right? That's why
about money.
That's why the SEC and the Big Ten are so big.
Yeah, so that's what I've been working on. I'm putting together a sports business show about. So the first show is going to be about stadiums. It's going to
cool.
Yeah, I'm going to have.
Is this going to be an ongoing series of sports business topics?
Yeah, ongoing. Right now I have five subjects. All 5 subjects that tick you off, Keith.
Awesome, I love it.
I have I'm gonna have a show about stadiums and the effect of stadiums on the communities that they're in, building new stadiums. I'm gonna have a show about NFTs and collectibles and cryptocurrency in sports. The show about the NIL and the contracts for college players.
Make sure you include the transfer portal because they're linked together, by the way.
And then you want a 2-hour show there, and then there's a show about athletes and their contracts and negotiations and how they work. I got an agent coming in. I'm interviewing an agent for baseball players. And the last one is going to be about, I had a sheet here. It'll pop in my head in a minute, but yeah, it's a business podcast I'm working on.
Cool.
You know,
make sure you advertise it well. I need to know what it is so I can tune in and let my head explode when
I'm letting you know now, Keith. No, I'm just kidding.
I'm just gonna tune in. I want to hear what you got to say.
I'm gonna post it and I'm gonna give it to you. Maybe I'll announce it on Wednesday too or Sunday.
Fodder for this show when I told you to your comments there.
Yeah, I know. I don't know anything about sports, man.
Well, business apparently, maybe you do. I don't know, but unfortunately, business is a big part of sports today. I've always, I guess we only got a couple minutes, but I will tell you this: I have prided myself, especially in the last 30 years, of being able to separate sports from the business side of it, the games from the business side of it, or the political side of it, as we've gotten closer to now recent times. It's getting harder and harder to do. And some of my friends gave up 30 years ago. I like sports. I don't want to just kiss it off, but it's getting harder and harder to separate the games from the rest of the things.
Yeah, it's the changing of the times and the way that branding, marketing, contracts, all those things, TV contracts.
There's a great topic for you right there. The separation from the game to the business side of it. You know, how do fans deal with that?
Oh, that's a good one. Yeah, I'll put that on. Yeah,
some fans like me have been able to compartmentalize it, but it's getting harder and harder for me to do, and I'm sure it is for others. They've given up.
So you say you want me to interview you?
Well, no, I don't need to be interviewed.
I got you.
I think it's a good topic. So got a couple comments as we're getting ready to go here. Let's go. Alex says, sounds like a great show. So there you go. Alec from over in the UK. Thanks for tuning in today, Al, by the way. Would be nice to hear about the agents. Another good topic is the agent side of this, which may play into some of the stuff you're already talking about. But you know what? I had Lee Steinberg. If you know Lee Steinberg, he's one of the top super agents in the last 40 years. I was going to get him for an interview. You should get an agent on to interview as part of this business side of it. And I think I still got his contact information. If I do,
send it my way.
I'll get it to you. So, and it kind of fell through at the last minute, and then I didn't follow up with him because I had stopped doing interviews for a little while. But
so what I'll do is I'll preface the show. I'll put some information on the Man New Yorker website.
Rick hasn't given up. That a boy.
Good job, Rick. You stick with your Vikings, Rick. I'm expecting big things from them. They're my black horse this year.
By the way, I told Rick the other day, watch, if you haven't watched it, you watch it too, Carlos. If you got Netflix, watch Quarterback. It follows Kirk Cousins, Mahomes, and Mariota through last season. It's really good. It's really interesting, and I got a new appreciation for Kirk Cousins as a person and what NFL quarterbacks go through. So,
you like that?
It was very interesting. Yeah, they played that up a lot, so it was very interesting a lot. We're over a little bit, guys. Thanks for tuning in today. Carlos, thanks for your contribution. As always, guys, we'll be back next Friday with more topics. I'll be back later with the Major League Baseball update. We're going to dive into pretty much every trade with Drew. And catch us on Sunday with the Sunday Stream of Consciousness. Everybody, see you later. Dan Harris, feel better, buddy?
Happy Friday. Feel better, Dan.